Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooke. Thank you so much for joining today. If you're new here, this is a channel where I talk about houseplants and do DIYs on my shorts. So if you have a minute, I'm pushing away a dog. While I'm doing that, take a minute and subscribe to my channel. If you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching another video. Today, if you saw from the title slide or title, whatever, we're going to be talking about the other plants. So usually I'm talking about my philodendron because that's primarily what I collect is philodendron. But today I'm going to talk about the other guys because there are other plants that I have in my collection that I do love and just never talk about. And those are Calathea, Maranta. I don't have any, no, I do have a Stromanthe, but I don't have a Tenanthe. So, no, wait. I don't have a Stromanthe, I have a Tenanthe. It's so many. So we're going to be talking about the Marantacea family. Wow. It's a mouthful. And those are prayer plants. So it's a very common name. You hear it talked about often in the plant community. They're prayer plants because they move. And they are beautiful plants, but a lot of people don't like them. And there's a reason. So we'll get into that. I started collecting Calathea quite a few years ago. I really was drawn to their colors, which is an obvious. If anyone has them or likes these plants, it's because they're colorful and they're beautiful and their foliage is not like any other plant. I almost said photo. Any other plant. They're not like any other plant. They are beautiful and I love them, and I collected several different varieties of them. So I have had a Maranta, a Calathea, Stromanthe, and a Tremanthe. It all rhymes. It's so complicated, but I have had every single version of that, like genus, and I have had a lot of different varieties of each of those. Now, the Stromanthe, I can't keep alive. So I love the Stromanthe Triostar. I think that they are a beautiful plant. Come on. Come on. Let's talk about these plants. Want to talk about them? Yes. One point of interest, if you are interested in Calathea, is they are non-toxic. So they are pet safe, kid safe. They're everyone's safe. So technically you could eat them and be okay. Wouldn't recommend eating them. But do you want to talk about, oh, hi. Do you want to talk about it with me? Oh, thank you. Can we talk about it together? Well, we are now a party, but they are kid pet safe, and so I don't feel bad leaving these on the ground. Now, I teach both of these children and try to teach this children about my plants. Dog, I try to teach them about my plants, not to touch them, to this might not happen. I do try to teach them to, not touch the plants, grab the plants, whatever. They both have knocked down my Thai constellation. This one has knocked over, other plants grabbing them. But to be fairly honest, they don't really touch them or mind them. I feel like they've grown up with them, and so they just are kind of used to them being there. I could understand if it was a child who had never seen a plant before, you put it in front of them, of course they're going to be like grabby and like, what is this? Which is common. But these are kid-friendly, pet-friendly plants, and so that is a plus for that. They come in different varieties, ton of different varieties. Again, the Stromanthes are the only ones that I have not been able to take care of and keep alive. I love the Triostar. I think that they're beautiful plants, but I've tried it 3 times, I think, and I've killed it every single time. So yeah, exactly. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong because the rest of them I can keep alive, particularly Maranta and Calathea. So I do have one Tenanthe, and I've had a lot of Tenanthe, and I think that they're easy to care for. So this is the Tenanthe amagris. It's a burley marks. So just like philodendron, there are burley markses. I need to Google why they get that name, burley marks. But anyways, maybe it's like a person or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm stating an obvious, but this is an amagris, burley marks, and I love this plant. I've had this previously. This is my second plant. The only reason I got it again was because I moved with it across country and I knew it wouldn't make it, but it was kind of a hard to find plant, and so I really wanted to try, and it didn't make it. And so I did purchase another one. It was really hard to find. I actually just found this one earlier this year, and it's been 2 years that I haven't had one. So really love this plant. I've had the burley marks, which is just a darker form. Excuse me. I've had the burley marks, which is actually just like a inverted version of this. It's darker leaves with the veining, lighter veining. And so beautiful plants, love them. These are easy to care for. I let this dry out. It sits in a southwest facing window. And so it gets a lot of light and it really enjoys that. Again, these plants move. So you can tell when it needs water because they kind of like really droop. Right now, this guy is out and full. At nighttime, he kind of closes up and it's just very interesting to watch. I wish I could get like a hyperlapse of them. I need to try. I don't know how to, but I need to try because they are beautiful plants and they do move and it's really interesting. So when I first got a Maranta and brought it home, like when I got it at the store, it was open and full. So this is a Maranta. I got it and it was open, it was full, and it was really pretty. And that's what drew me in was the spots and like all of the veining. And then, that night my husband looked at it and he kind of freaked out and he's like, "Your plant's already dead." And I was like, "What?" And I looked at it and it was all closed up. And we were seriously sitting there with the plant trying to pry the leaves down to see like what was wrong with it. It was really entertaining until we both Googled it and then found out they're prayer plants. And so they do move, they close up. And so it's very entertaining. I just enjoy that story because why are we moving? You know, we're trying to like pry the plants leaves down. I don't know why, but this is a Maranta lemon lime, so part of the Maranta family, but still part of the Marantaceae family. This guy also I keep in, or I let dry all the way out. Now this is a propagation, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But this guy, he sits in sphagnum moss. I let it dry all the way out. Ooh, my coffee's up there. It's not a good idea. Then there's Calathea. And so I love Calathea. I have 2 Calathea currently. So this is my Calathea orbifolia. I've had this guy several times before and I really wanted to keep it alive and it just always died like the Triostar and I could never figure out why. After much trial and error, I've just done this self-watering. Ooh, I need to put water in it. So I made this self-watering base. This is just a base from Home Goods. I fill it with water. I have a wicking system that I created and the terracotta pot. And it just wicks water up whenever it needs. And so that is the only way I've been able to keep this guy alive and happy. And look how beautiful the leaves are. There are no brown spots on these guys. It's amazing. It's amazing. There are brown leaves down here. This is like the older leaves. But as far as the new leaves, they're all really good looking. Okay, old leaf. They look really nice and they've lasted and they're getting really large. So I love this plant. I mean, there's not foliage out there like this, to me at least. So this is beautiful and just the coloring and the pattern of them, like it's so beautiful and pretty. And how can you not want one? And that's what a lot of people fall into is they want one because the colors. But self-watering, that's the only way I can keep this guy alive. And it has sustained it. It's been doing great. I haven't had any issues with it. And so I have it in a chunkier soil mix and just keep it in this self-watering planter. So yes, that's the only thing is with these, watering is important. What your water is important. So I use filtered water on all of my Calathea and Maranta, Tenanthe, etc. because they do tend to go brown and die off if you're using your hard tap water because our tap water is filled with chemicals that we don't know. You can get a test for it. I don't do that. I just have a filtered water system on my fridge and that's what I use. But you do need to worry about the watering, that if you're struggling with Calathea, it's the watering. I guarantee you it's the watering. Like me personally, I have kept humidifiers by them. I think they're always going to have browning like edges and stuff. They're just a sensitive plant. But if you keep the water to filtered water and just keep it consistently moist, usually there's minimal damage there. But that's Calathea. And then this is also a Calathea. So this is my second favorite Calathea. It is the rattlesnake Calathea. And it's beautiful, easy to care for. I would say these are more hardy Calatheas, if anything. No! These are more hardy Calathea versus the orbifolia here. I have this in a plastic pot and I have always kept it in a plastic pot. But I do water with filtered water the same way. Now I let this guy dry out and he doesn't seem to mind. Yes, he's got browning edges. You can see there. I have a baby now. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. And this one is a Maranta, but it's a variegated form of it. And so they call this a beauty Kim. in stores. And so you can see the variegation here. It's just like a lime and a white variegation. Super beautiful. I found this at Lowe's for $2 or something and picked it up. Now this guy is the normal, like, man, I can't, Kirchala, I'm not even going to try to guess, but it's just like a normal green. It's this side that's the variegated part of it. It does have a new point of growth on the bottom, and I'm curious to see if it'll be variegated or not. This guy's beautiful. Now I let it dry all the way out, and I filtered water. And it sits at the same place that my rattlesnake does, which is in a very low light situation. And this is my newest one. This is one of the plants that was on my wish list for a really long time. This is a silver band Maranta, and it's so beautiful, and it's currently blooming. And so these Maranta here, they bloom, and they have these smallest little blooms here, and they're really beautiful. Okay, so that was a quick overview of what I have currently. I had so many more, and I actually have the unvariegated version of this in another pot on the side of my fridge, but that's currently what I have. I used to have probably like 20 more Calathea, believe it or not. And then I knew, again, they wouldn't survive our move, so I got rid of them. So Calathea are very sensitive plants. They have very thin leaves and very thin root system. And so they're easily disturbed. And so when you are repotting these guys, or if you're watering them, they're very sensitive to that. And so you do have to watch when you repot to not try and break up all the roots and just keep them as is as much as you can. Because again, that little disturbance can cause them major disturbance. I try to touch them and be, all up in them as little as possible. I don't repot them very often because, again, they do have a very fine root system. Now, some of them grow really quickly if you give them the right conditions. Like Marantas, they grow extremely fast. I have found my lemon lime and my red Maranta, which I don't know like the proper name for it, they grow extremely quick. And I have repotted them before. Now, I have had a variegated form of this Maranta, and I can see it down here. There are quite a bit of roots, and I did repot it, and it died immediately. And so I'm just now cautious when it comes to these guys and repotting them. And so again, I don't tend to break all the roots up and take all the soil off. I just replace the soil and fill in what's needed. So when you're repotting, yeah, just be careful and aware of that. When you're using water, use filtered water. Now, the cool thing about some of these guys is they are propagatable. You can propagate them. So Maranta, you can propagate them. They have nodes, just like a philodendron or a pothos. So right here, this is its node. And so you can chop below this, again, just like you would with a philodendron, and propagate it. Now, I would suggest to actually remove the leaves that are near the node or around it. Like this bottom leaf here, if I was propagating it, I would remove it. So that way the roots can come out more. I've found that if I don't do that and just leave the leaves on, it usually leave the leaves on, the roots don't form, and it usually rots. And so that's the only difference I would say versus a pothos or a philodendron. The aerial roots are already on the outside. They're already ready to form. These guys aren't. And so you kind of have to break it open and give it that space. But I have propagated them in sphagnum moss. I have propagated them in water. I've not tried perlite. I'm sure it will work just as fine, but it does take to sphagnum moss, to me, the best. I have had this guy sitting in sphagnum moss for quite a few months, but it's really rooted in there. And you can see all these little fine roots in here. It's very difficult to see them because, again, they are fine. They're not this thick, chunky root like you would see on a philodendron or pothos, monstera, something like that. But you can definitely propagate them. Now, if you wanted to propagate or make more of a Calathea, Stramanthe, or a Tenanthe, you have to separate those. So it's by division. And so that means that you would have to break open the soil and see where the plant is like separated, where there are multiple plants, and you can just pull them apart and just repot them and they will grow. But you cannot chop these and propagate them in water. That will not work. So that's the only difference between, a Maranta, a Tenanthe, Stramanthe, and a Calathea. Even though they are in the same family, they cannot be propagated the same way. So same here, you can see this guy, like you can see these individual shoots. So if I were to open the soil up, I could pull those apart and then replant them and it would start to grow. But otherwise, they're very much the same care. They like lower light situations, but they can take higher light. These are ground covering plants. So I have noticed that my Maranta like the higher light. And I think it's because their leaves are a lot thicker. These are very velvety thick leaves versus these rattlesnake leaves are very thin and just like feel like paper actually. They're very paper-like. The Tenanthes, some of them are much thicker. So my burley marks in this amagris, I have put in highlight and it doesn't seem to mind it because the leaves are thicker. But I wouldn't dare put my orbifolia in highlight. I've done that and they just shrivel up and die. Again, this Maranta, I have it in my southwest facing window just right here and it seems to love it. I have had all of my Maranta, I think, previously in a west-facing window, and they really liked it. They bloomed constantly, and so that's what's happening here. So again, Maranta bloom. My Calatheas and, Stromanthe, they will bloom if they are in the perfect condition in the wild, but here in the home setting, I've never had one bloom. I've only had my Marantas bloom, and they're the cutest little blooms. My Maranta, my red Maranta has bloomed the most, I would say, and I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it before I moved. I gave it away, but it bloomed constantly. And so it was so cute. I loved seeing the blooms on it, but because they die off like kind of continuously and then they continuously like come back, it's a very bizarre pattern of how they bloom. So if you see these little guys coming out like this and like this one right here, it's not a leaf, it's a bloom. Some people cut them off because they think that it's going to, oh, I found a mealybug. Oh, I'm going to freak out. Okay, well, this is a mealybug right there. Yeah, you can see it. I'll point a circle because I'm not touching it right now. But I need to keep. Good thing I've kept this away from all my other plants. So sweet. I'm going to take some Jack's Dead bug brew to that. Yes, pests. Let's talk about pests because some Calathea are extremely pest. They call to the pests. And so when I had Calathea, I think that the most pests issue that I had were fungus gnats, number one, because they like to be well watered. They don't like to dry out. And so, of course, if you're using a soil like straight soil mix, which is currently what a lot of my Calathea are in, fungus gnats are going to be an issue. But spider mites are an issue for people, which I have never had a spider mite issue on my Calathea, believe it or not. I've had spider mites on my Monstera, which is weird, but I've never had an issue with them with that. And so spider mites tend to like them. I have not dealt with a mealybug problem. I've actually never heard of Calathea getting mealybugs. It's obvious like any plant can get a mealybug, but not seen that. That's new. I would say fungus gnats, yeah, are the only issue. I really haven't dealt with a thrips issue or any other pest. Any other pest on them. Their leaves are just really thin. I don't know. Maybe they're just mine. I don't know. I don't know why mine haven't called to the pests yet, which I'm glad that they haven't. But yeah, pests can happen. Now, I just got that plant from a store last week. Yeah, the end of last week. And so, yeah, that's what happens. I didn't spray it down. I didn't do anything like that. But pests usually, again, fungus gnats are going to be my biggest problem. Besides for this pest. My Calathea overview, use filtered water, keep them well watered. You can propagate the Maranta. You have to divide the other ones, the other three that I mentioned. And they're always going to have brown crispy tips. I don't know. That's just going to happen. They're always going to have brown crispy leaves. It's just a part of it. But if you get the watering down and light, I think that you'll do just fine with these. They're actually not as complicated to care for as a lot of people think. Unless you have like a TrioStar, then I'm out. But self-watering planters, if you really want one of these, are your best bet and your best like friend on this plant or for this plant. Usually I don't suggest them for any of my other plants, but for these guys for sure would be using a self-watering planter. But yeah, those were my tips. That was my other guys collection. So hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments if you have any of these plants and if you love Calathea, because I really do. So make sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.